On episode 71 of Chit Chat, we get in touch with our dark side and talk all things Villainous with Luke Jones of Let's Get Wicked. He probably knows the Villainous series better than anyone else, and we're gonna put him to the test. Not to mention, see what other games he's into.
Welcome back to Chit Chat.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 71. 71. That doesn't hold any special relevance, does it, Ryan? Is there anything 71 that we should know about?
I believe you are 71 years old.
No, Dave would be closer to 71 than I. So, anyway.
I wanted to connect it to Villainous. I really did. But
Yes.
I can't think of any Disney reference for 71.
No, there's not.
So, tonight's episode, we have a special guest, Luke Jones. Welcome. So for you guys who don't know, Luke runs a YouTube channel that is dedicated to Villainous, and that includes both Disney Villainous and now Marvel Villainous. And 100% of the current content is Villainous stuff. And I imagine Luke will probably get into other things as well. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, we have a giveaway for last week's winner, our winner for last week's giveaway, and that is Stephen Clark. You have won Court of the Dead Dark Harvest. All you have to do is email us at manvsmeeple@gmail.com. This week we're giving away a copy of AEG's Tiny Towns and an expansion called Fortune. Again, all you have to do is comment in the comment section and you will be entered to win. All right, so let's start. Joker Jonesy.
Yes.
That's your name online.
That's my internet name.
Yeah, how did Joker Jonesy come into play?
Oh, so I'll make this story quick. So when I was in grad school, I interned out in Seattle at this little company called ID Tech, which is a technology summer camp where they just basically teach like programming stuff. And the whole gimmick when you're an instructor with them is that you have to pick like a nickname that you don't go by so the students don't know what your real name is. And the first summer I did it, I was Jonesy because last name's Jones. And I couldn't think of anything else clever. The second summer I did Joker because that year there's this little game some of you may or may not know called Persona 5, and the lead guy, his code name is Joker, and I totally stole that because that game stole my heart. So I that's the name. So I just merged the two together, Joker Jonesy, and there you go. That was
you
that was
and
the better
millions
username.
others. This is gonna be interesting. So you're also a video gamer, right?
I am.
We'll get into that.
You talk way more than Joker, though.
Oh yeah, I know I do. I got the hair. I remember that summer too when I was in Seattle. I actually dyed my hair black because I was like going all in on the aesthetic. I wear this black jacket all the time too. It's like it's been my thing for like ever. But like I was like, yes, this is my character. I finally identify with somebody.
Nice.
So yeah, love Persona.
So for you guys who are just joining us, Luke is also from Indianapolis. He's about 30 minutes from myself, David, Kira, and Ryan here in town. As I said, he runs a website for YouTube, not a website, but on YouTube, all about Villainous content. What is the name of that? Tell us about how this came into play, what the name of the site is, and why Villainous of all games.
Okay, so we'll start with the name. So the name is called Let's Get Wicked. And really, I was trying to think of, because like when you look at all the Disney boxes, there's something about like Wicked, like you have Wicked to the Core or The Worst Takes It All. And I was trying to think of like a clever way to like make this cool tagline. And what really got it though was if you read the quote that Radigan has, he says like so delightfully wicked. And that's kind of the tagline that I stole without all the content that I put on the channel. And like we also run a podcast called Let's Get Wicked. And that's like the ending portion of every podcast, Stay Delightfully Wicked. So I kind of took that, and we've all seen, you know, old school like 80s, 90s films where they're like, it's wicked, dude, and stuff like that. And that's kind of where I take it with like, let's get wicked. Let's be cool to each other, but we're also being bad guys because that's the type of words that they say.
And I think that's the charm of this game too, right? Like being a villain is very, very unique. Like so often we're playing the heroes, taking the Disney villains, which are in and themselves are super charismatic and people enjoy them even though they don't want to enjoy them. They're part of that world. And that's just, you know, it's super cool to play those guys.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I absolutely adore this game is actually what you already brought up is the character. I come from a fighting game background. I love fighting games. I love Street Fighter. I love Tekken. I love Killer Instinct is my absolute favorite of all the fighting games. And what the fighting games always focus on is character. And I love that about gaming in general, when a game focuses in on one particular character and that's what you play. And I've always been a huge tabletop gamer. And a lot of the games that I normally play, though, don't really revolve around a character. Like, you usually play like a faction or an army or just like a general, like, you think if you're, especially like in a deck builder, you're like God up high in the sky type of ordeal where you're managing these cards that might be all these different characters, but you're not really honed in on a character. And that's really what got me with Villainous, was you really are playing a character and doing all these kind of cool little mechanical combo things with these characters. And it focuses in on that super hard, like no other game is done. And for someone who loves like playing as a character in all of games, and that's just the focus, like that's what really got it for me. I just love that whole aesthetic of Disney.
Are you a Disney fan?
I am a Disney fan, and it's funny because when I started playing Villainous, I kind of forgot how big of a Disney fan I was. Growing up, I love The Lion King. I love Nightmare Before Christmas. I love Hercules, Emperor's New Groove. Tarzan's probably my favorite, and we're probably never getting Tarzan in this game, but it's okay. But I do generally love Disney movies, and it's kind of the thing of like when I started playing this game, I forgot. And then I kind of went back and started rewatching everything, which is kind of what everyone does when you play Villainous. It's like, oh, wow, how long ago has it been since I've seen this? And you just reimagine, and you're like, oh, wow, I am a huge Disney fan. You know, it's like that come to moment right there.
Yeah. I was going to say, because you touched on something, and that fighting game reference, for those who don't play video games, I really like that games are starting to embrace that. And we've seen it in Dice Throne, where you literally just open up Dice Throne, pull out a character pack, and you play that character. And I think that is what drew me into Villainous. And I like, obviously they did this with Marvel Villainous as well. And I like that the presentation of this game, where everything, you have your little fold out, you have your little token, like everything is very centric to your character. So these games feel asymmetric, basically from even unboxing the character all the way through gameplay. And for me, at least, that's my big reason for playing Villainous more than anything else.
Yeah, I really, what's interesting about this game is that like when you really look at it from a top-down perspective, is like the mover, the board, that's all superfluous. They could have done that in a very much cheaper way for production and make things cheaper, but they really decided to go all in and be like, hey, we're going to have this weird worker placement thing where the player has to move their figure and like move it to a different location and take these actions. Let's make that figure like actually resemble the character. And let's not just make this board like maybe like 4 cards or something like that. Like, no, let's make this something that you open up. It's like a storybook almost. And I think that's what they were going with, especially with Disney, where you're opening up this board and it's like now you get to have the world in front of you and start telling the story. Because really that's what the Villainous games are, is they're storytelling games. Like they are you trying to retell the story of these movies. And with Marvel, you're really telling your own story, which is we'll get to that with Marvel. But like I just love that. We talk a lot of especially in 2020, like games are really evolving into being these storytelling platforms, and I think Villainous really took it on its head with its like, let's have the players be able to retell the story of these classic Disney movies that no other game has really done before, and it's really awesome to see that they've actually been able to capture this weird, like, competitive Disney game that's really well put together that we've never seen before. And it's really spawned a huge thing of a lot of different licensed games finally getting the limelight of, wow, there's actually a good board game or a game that you can get with this license on it. And specifically Disney, because I don't think anyone here can probably count on even 2 or 3 fingers how many really good Disney games we have in the tabletop space.
Not many. And the other important thing that you mentioned too is capturing it. Like, not only did they make a good game, but they made a very, very pretty game. And that's, for Disney, that's pretty easy to do because Disney kind of, leads by example. But people can take an IP and turn it into basically anything they want. The art in this game and in the Marvel game is just incredible. Like, if you look at the Pete, the moment they announced Pete and Villainous and they did that black and white motif, they just spoke to the Disney audience, and they spoke to gamers too, because they recognize how important it is to nail those characters. And they've done it with everything they've done. They've not only nailed the look of the characters, but they've also nailed the theme of the characters. Like they've really looked at each one of these villains, and that's that goes really to Prospero Hall. Like them being able to take that license and then really understanding what it means to be those villains, and both of these two licenses has been really important to making people like us gravitate towards it. Because let's be honest, Disney games, I love Disney. I probably fall on the outside because my family and I go to Disney as much as we can. We do Disney cruises. We just love Disney, so it speaks to me. But for other people that aren't Disney fans, when you look at these cards and you look at this art, you're immediately drawn in. That's such a huge thing for this game. One question I want to ask before we start steering into more the depth of the game: how many times have you played Villainous, both Marvel and Disney?
I would say probably over 500 different games.
Wow.
And the thing is, people ask me all the time in our community, they're like, oh, the YouTube videos are the only representation of you playing this game. And I'm like, do you guys have any idea how much Villainous I play off, like, for content as well as in the flesh? Like, literally the last month, I was playing with my neighbor who's brand new to Villainous, and we went through every single, she played every single Disney Villainous character twice. So right now there's 15. That's at least 30 different games within the month of June in the flesh, of just Disney. And now with Marvel, we've probably racked up at least 20 unique games with different groups and different numbers of people. And I've played so much of this game. It's stupid.
Well, I think like if you have a channel like we have at MVM where we cover a bunch of different games, we play each game a couple times, but we would never call ourselves experts on any one of those games. I think to have a channel like yours where you're really diving deep in strategy, I mean, you kind of have to play the game 500 times, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't really stop playing if you want to keep making content.
No, and like one of the things that I'll say about Villainous, and this kind of goes into a little the depth, so I apologize, but so I am actually a teacher. I teach at a university, and one of the biggest things that's always drawn me with the world of education is, as an educator, you always need to be constantly learning about like your field and trying to evolve and grow. And with Villainous, one of the biggest things I have to give Prospero Hall is that Villainous is a teaching game. It is constantly trying to tell you how to improve every single time that you play. Even when you win, it's like, how could I have done that better? Not only when you're playing like in your area, but also when you're playing against your opponents, and like the different characters and the different matchups, and like learning like, oh, if I'm playing against this character, they have this condition card that could really go against mine. So I have to play differently around that, or else I might get screwed over. So there's a lot of different little things that you are constantly learning in this game that just makes me want to keep playing it. And like I was playing on my Twitch channel the other day, some matches, and we have characters that are evolving over these years this game has been out. And I played a Maleficent that is insanely crazy compared to probably what you've played Maleficent in your games. And it's just like, wow, I now have to relearn not only how to play my own character, but play against Maleficent. And this character's been out for over 2 years now at this point. So it's amazing how much replayability of value of this game that even, and they say it in the instructions too, is like, yeah, go learn another character, but they don't touch on the fact that it's not you just learning the other character, it's learning how to play against that character and mastering your own character. Because that's really it. Because win or lose, the goal is to have fun, and you don't want to get yourself buried in the ground. Your goal is try to get through the humps that you might deal with to have a ton of fun with this game. So,
Kira, do you have a question?
I did. So there's been a handful of questions that kind of lead me to want to ask you, do you track your wins and losses, and what's your win percentage overall for Villainous? Or are there certain characters you tend to have a better win percentage with? Tell us more about that.
I will say two things with that. So I don't keep track of my own personal stats, but we actually recently within our community started what's called the Wicked League. We're in a prologue phase right now, which is basically the testing phase, trying to make sure everything's working. And we actually kept track of our win-loss ratios, and also with different characters and like the matchups and stuff. And I was positive, not by a whole lot. I think I only played for this thing. I think I played 18 different games in total. And I don't remember what my win ratio was, but I was positive, but it wasn't like 80 or 90. I think it was like 60, 65. When it comes to the characters I played the most, though, I love Scar. Scar is the absolute epitome of I love about game design. I come from going back to the fighting games. I love Killer Instinct because Killer Instinct is a very high risk, high reward fighting game. It's a lot of mind games. And if you played Scar, he's very high risk, high reward. I won't go into super depth. You can go watch a video on my channel talking about that because I do a whole video dedicated to that. But he just nails that for me. And on top of the fact of all the characters right now, he's my absolute favorite of just like from a thematic standpoint. I love the Lion King. Until we get Oogie Boogie, do it, Ravensburger. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
but I love Scar. He just fits everything perfectly for my type of play style. I'm incredibly aggressive. I love high risk, high reward. I probably played more games with Scar than any of the other characters.
So I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
But you can go. I mean, go ahead.
I was before I forget. Yeah, I was going to ask you. I already kind of know your answer to this, just because I know that you love the game and you'll defend it. There are a lot of people that feel like Villainous is too random, and I can see that. Like there's some random things that can happen in there. It's not like Magic or Marvel or those kind of games where you're building a deck. You get a deck and it is what it is. And sometimes your draws are good. Sometimes your draws are bad. Like the Queen of Hearts is a really good example where if you don't get the right combination of things, you have to re-dig out those cards from that deck.
Right.
Do you see in a competitive league, is there people that are just so good that they can see past those things, or is that just an inherent flaw of Villainous?
So that's the randomness is with any card game, because even like you bring up Magic and it's like with the thing with those deck building style of games is that like part of the whole purpose of deck building is consistency. I played a lot of Star Wars Destiny, and like Destiny is you're trying to build as consistent deck as possible to make the outcome come in your favor. And what's unique about Villainous is that you're right, you do get a fixed deck. And I think what really kind of the goal with the deck really is that you have to work around the fact that sometimes things aren't always going to be consistent in your favor. There might be that one game that you're really just going to get buried in the ground and you're not drawing anything. I was playing Scar recently, and I drew all 3 of the unique Hungry Hyenas in the first 15 cards and no other allies. So yeah, that will happen. But part of it too is it does say it's a strategy game. And the whole purpose of strategy games is to figure out, based off the cards that you were given, what is the best decisions to do in order to try to keep moving forward with your objective. And I think in a 1v1 format, this game is incredible because there is so much meta. Like, even though you're only in your own realm, there is so much strategy on how to counter the different players. And with that, like where you're supposed to go on your turns to counter what they're doing, what condition cards that you might play against them, and like if you know your opponent has those condition cards, like what you might hold back to do. I was actually talking with someone today where they were playing Queen of Hearts versus Jafar, and Queen of Hearts has been proven in our league to be incredibly good, but Jafar has this little combination of deception and manipulation, where manipulation, you can play the card to grab something out of your discard pile if the opponent has 3 allies, and deception is if they have 2 items, you can play it and basically play a fake card. And guess what you can do? Play deception twice if you have it in hand. Then play manipulation, grab back deception, play it again. There is some crazy stuff that you can do in this game that in normal matchups that like it's more about you have to play the game constantly, because I think one of the things that happens when people say that criticism that you said about the randomness with Villainous is like they are the player that they will play the game 3 or 4 times, maybe play their favorite character, and then be done. And that you're not getting the full experience of the game. And you don't necessarily have to have played 500 games like I have to get that experience. But if you just play with the same character against different players, like maybe 20 different villains or 10 different players, and you're playing like the same 2 characters, you will learn a lot about like the different strategies. And I talk a lot because we do a lot of 1v1 for the channel, and because I think that's the best way to play Disney at least. But even in multiplayer, like there's still that strategy of like, all right, like what should I be thinking about when going against all 3 of these different characters or 4 or whatnot? There's a lot to dive into. I think it just requires folks to take a different lens onto it, because this game is marketed towards a casual audience. Like, even though it's super in-depth, it's very casual.
I'm glad that we talked about that, because the question I was going to ask, we actually kind of looped right back into it. And to give a little bit of, for those who don't know, usually in a league game, there's like the meta. You've referenced the meta a minute ago. And the meta is like the small like circle of play that you experiment with like the group of people that you maybe play with every week. Maybe some decks are really popular. Like in Magic, some card combinations are really popular one week, and then somebody figures out how to counter that card combination, and then those decks are maybe really powerful at the next championship or whatever. Now, in Villainous, you can't modify your deck at all. Like, so there's no question of using different card combinations. So how does the meta actually play out at that level? Is it just based on strategies, or is there certain methods?
So it's a combination of methods and character power, because this game is really balanced, but there's definitely characters that rise and fall based off of, players coming in, showing off these crazy new strategies with these characters that no one's seen before. Because like I brought up Maleficent earlier, and like if you don't know what Maleficent's objective is in Villainous, essentially just she needs to play a curse card at each location. But the catch is a lot of her fate deck is countering around just getting rid of those curses. But if you look at the curse cards, they specifically have defenses around different things. So what's been happening recently is that to counter the fact that Maleficent can really get her curses destroyed, instead of playing like a curse to every location and try to play fast, they'll play slower and stack curses at locations. So that way you play a curse here, you can no longer play the hero at that location and discard the other curse. And then what you can do is once you're ready, you can just move the curses around and then put your opponent in check. And then as soon as that happens, you do it again. But it requires players to go out and discover those strategies. We actually hosted a tournament in June, and I always put Yzma at the bottom of my tier list. And we had someone come in with an awesome Yzma player and just was third place.
She's awesome.
Took third place with Yzma. And it was crazy. And like, we've also and not trying to toot my own horn, everyone always said Scar was garbage tier. And I was like, no, I'm not going to have that happen. So I spent 2 months probably grinding out with this character matches and just getting my butt kicked. And finally, just something clicked one day. And then all of a sudden, I just started winning. And people were like, we are now scared of Scar. We're scared of Joker Scar specifically. But, I mean, that's what you have to do is, like, the players have to get that deep into the game. And then that's when the meta is created. Like, to give you some perspective, at least from the past 3 months, we went from Evil Queen being the best to Captain Hook to now Dr. Facilier and Ratigan. And now Queen of Hearts is like really jumping up on that tier list. And then that doesn't mean the fact that other people are experimenting with other characters. We're actually really not that high on Pete, and people have been proving that Pete's been really doing some damage lately. So it's like, it's really up to the players to put the time into these characters to really kind of see all the gimmicks and everything, and also experiment around how to do things. Because you might also have players who play the character in incredibly different ways that are both effective. So
yeah, I think that's the problem with people who have only played a handful of times and said the randomness doesn't appeal to me. That you really have to get into the game to understand how those characters work. And It's kind of the same with any board game. Like you can play a board game once, and those first impressions may lead you down one path or the other. But unless you really enjoyed the initial experience and can see past those things, it's hard for some people to see everything that the game has to offer. What is your dream character besides Oogie Boogie? I know we've mentioned that. Like, what other villains do you want to see? I would imagine that you've had some contact, at least a little bit of contact with Prospero Hall.
So I will say this. This is all I can say. I mean, there's a lot of things I could say about. I don't know what the future of Disney specifically is. They keep saying that this is not the end, and the only context I can give in terms of characters we know that are coming. We did a 10th episode special of the podcast live on Twitch, and someone I know, I won't name the name because I don't know if they actually got in trouble for this. They jumped in as Prospero Hall on Twitch, and we were making this cheeky comment because the one character that everyone knows is like, Villainous can't be over because Gaston's not here yet. Yeah. And we were making this cheeky comment, and Prospero Hall didn't necessarily say, yes, he's coming, but they're like, it's up to Ravensburger when he wants to come. We have many decks designed. And we were like, okay, Gaston's officially confirmed. And that's all I know. But the dream character besides Oogie, because Nightmare Before Christmas is also one of my absolute favorite films. And I also really like Gaston. But the one character I absolutely want to see in this game is Turnabog. I want to see Turnabog so bad. I think the art and the mover and like the different cards that he would do would be super cool. I just think he'd be super hard to do because it is a villain based off of a short animated part of Fantasia. And I think a lot of people, when they, especially I know within our community, they relate Chernobog with the boss fight from Kingdom Hearts at the end of the first Kingdom Hearts, which is also fantastic. You got the music playing in the background and stuff. So I wish if they can find a way to make it work, I would love to see Chernobog.
A
He's my
giant version.
absolute want.
Right.
Yeah, the wings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
He's so cool.
That'd be cool.
I think he'd be great. Like if they ever did some kind of like cooperative or like one versus many where you had like multiple villains and then Chernobog was like,
yes,
that'd be pretty cool.
that'd be awesome. That'd be sick.
All right, let's transition over to Marvel. As most people know, Marvel just came out. Marvel Villainous just came out this past month. It's widely available now, I believe, at Target and other retailers. We've had a chance to play it. Obviously, you've played it a handful of times. It's kind of a dream project. Now they have Disney and Marvel, both licenses I really, really love.
Yeah.
Marvel seems like it could go on infinitely. I mean, they really could create dozens and dozens and dozens.
Yes.
I think Disney has a shelf life, obviously, just tied to the movies. And then you have to go really obscure with Disney. What is your initial impressions of Marvel? Knowing that you haven't played it nearly as much, there's not as many villains out there. There are obviously some gameplay changes, I feel, for the better in the game. What is your opinion?
So, this is going to sound a little weird, but stick with me. I think Marvel Villainous is literally everything that, or not everything. There's one thing. Anything that was wrong with Disney, they fixed with Marvel. They fixed a lot of stuff that makes the game play a lot smoother, a lot more fun. For someone like I've been playing with my neighbor who just got into Disney and like she was kind of not struggling, but like characters are a little difficult to kind of grasp and figure out what they're supposed to do. But Marvel is a lot easier to jump in and play. Having said that, though, I do think there's a lot of rules and production issues with Marvel that really kind of hold it back from me trying to say go out and buy it now, because there's a lot that within the rules and some of the card wordings and some of the production stuff that, we are experienced tabletop gamers, so we can kind of figure this stuff out and go on Board Game Geek and get this stuff answered. But like we talk about the casual audience, I couldn't recommend someone who just is a Marvel fan and never got into Disney, but like, oh, Marvel Villainous looks cool. I can't necessarily recommend the casual audience to go out and buy the game yet until some of the stuff is fixed.
What would some of those things be? Just a couple of them. Offhand.
So I have the cards in front of me for those of you who are watching live.
Yes. Show me.
So the biggest one is some of the card misprint stuff. So if you don't know, if you own Marvel Villainous, there is Taste of Cosmic Power, which is supposed to be an effect, but there are 3 copies of it. One of it's an effect. There's 2 items. Is clearly worded like it's supposed to be an item, but based off some people I know who play tested, this game did not get done play testing until the end of January. So keep that in mind with the production skew of manufacturing and all that stuff. On top of that, Legions of Thanos, where it says no additional ability, they spelled additional wrong.
Nice.
What's funny too is if you look at the Power Stone, there's a cost, and you don't play it. And if you look at all the promotional materials, they have the cost on there. They've actually said it's a misprint. We're going to fix it in future printing. And then there are a bunch of weird ruling stuff that I can get into. We don't necessarily need to get into, but like to boil it down, what it looks like happened was, and this is for those of you who do not know, Prospero Hall built the framework for Marvel Villainous. However, they did not design all the characters. Ravensburger actually took this in-house to develop the characters, and that's what happened. So they are now brand new to the whole, like, we need to build teams, we have to use the framework. And essentially, they're just like custom creators with the framework. And if you read like how some of these cards are worded, and then like when you go on Board Game Geek for their intent, it's very different than what the intention of the card was for. The best example of this to talk about is Killmonger's card Rook, where it says when one other ally would be defeated at Rook's location, you may remove Rook instead. And it's been clarified in the rule book that defeated is when the character's vanquished by a vanquish action, which can happen. And it's been ruled on Board Game Geek that this can also work when the character, when a character's used to vanquish somebody. So you can sacrifice Rook that way, and that's not considered defeat. And the card's worded weird. It's the same thing for a bunch of Taskmaster's cards too. His Shield, Training Academy, and Trainees, where their intent of the card is different than what's worded, and that causes some weird things. Because like when And like I was teaching this to two new people last night, and they were like, "Oh, this means this," and I'm like, "Actually, it means this," and they're like, "What?" And then like you as the person who's trying to explain to teach the game, you just look like an idiot, because they're like, "Wait, you're trying to screw me over? You're trying to make me lose?" But I mean, no, but it's just like. And like we have in our community, we have a bunch of people who basically flat out said like there are, and this is just a small sampling. Like there are a ton more weird things that I can get into, but it's like it's very clear that there were different teams working on these characters, and the people that they play tested with, especially with a lot of the new unique mechanics that Marvel does bring, weren't 100% like super hardcore gamers. Like they aren't the ones that like me, I'm a programmer by trade, so decision trees, logic algorithms, and all that stuff. That's what you need to do a lot of these checks. And it's just like they were like, "All right, does this card make sense to you?" "Yep." "All right."
And that
and then
for those people that don't know, that may be also a future issue because for well, I mean, Prospero Hall, as you already said, was originally working with Ravensburger on the original Disney. They were bought by Funko. So now Prospero Hall, which is a design group of individuals, now does work for Funko. So obviously, Ravensburger still owns the license to all the Villainous content. So as you just said, they're now developing it in-house without the same people, which,
Right.
I mean, I don't know how that's going to end, but if you're seeing issues right now, you have to be a little bit concerned that these may continue. However, from the villains that we've seen so far, they've kept a lot of the core, like, thematic things around them. Obviously all the functioning within the game stays the same as well. So they've nailed that, but if they're missing those little things, those may continue.
Yeah. And like when I talk about the smoothness, like when you play this game, like for those of you who have not played this game, oh my gosh, like compared to Disney, this game runs smooth as butter. Like it's incredible. But there's just a lot of little things that like if you're jumping into this for the first time, a perfect example is with Ultron, 2 of his goals require him to remove his sentries. But if you read the villain guide, it doesn't talk about any way how that operation is supposed to work. Like how does the removal of the sentries work? Is it an action that you take? Is it like when you remove them, when you take a vanquish action, does that count? It doesn't specify that. And you have to go on Board Game Geek to get there. And like I said, we're the hardcore guys. And gals. We are going to go on the forums and talk to the developers and get all this insider knowledge on how stuff works. But Joe Schmo, who's going to go to Target and buy Marvel Villainous because it says Marvel on the box, they aren't going to understand that. And like, perfect example, literally, I had some folks in our community that basically were like, I'm more of a Marvel fan, and this is me too. I'm a big Marvel fan compared to Disney, and they're like, I can't play this game because this game just does not feel finished yet. And because they are the ones that are like, they're in like a lot of these issues that I'm bringing up, they happen often because there's a lot of core mechanics that occur a lot with these characters. Like specifically Training Academy with Taskmaster is like, that's one of the core ways that you build strength with the character. And when the card intent is way different than what's said on the card, it's like, or like how it's supposed to operate, it's so confusing. And I know when I talked to the lead developer on Perfectly Wretched, and they said with Prospero Hall's intent with Disney, it's always been that there's been this imaginative design philosophy where stuff is meant to be open so that way people can interpret it however they want, although there is kind of a definitive way you should be playing the card. Here with Marvel, since there's a lot more interaction, which is fantastic, by the way, I absolutely adore the interaction stuff with the characters. It's just like a lot of this edge case stuff like comes into play a lot more often because like with Disney, there are those edge case stuff, but it's super rare when that stuff will occur.
Yeah.
In Marvel, it happens all the time, and it's like it doesn't even seem like they have the answers yet because they read the card and they're like, oh no, yeah, that was not worded how we intended it to. They have said that there's supposed to be a reprint coming out in December. So we'll see if things get fixed. If not everything gets fixed, I don't know what's going to be because the thing that hurts me the most is that this game plays so much better than Disney. And I love Marvel so much more than Disney too. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. When Venom comes to this game, I will cry. But it hurts because it's just like, these things are things that if you gave these to people who understand decision tree philosophy and play games hardcore, and granted, you still need to test with your casual audience too in mind, this is when these issues are going to run up. And I would hate to have like a family who brings this home to their kids try to play this for the first time and they're not understanding stuff and they're like, all right, game's putting on the shelf, or I'm going to sell my copy or whatever. I would hate to do that because the whole purpose of the YouTube channel is to get people excited about this game.
Right.
Like, that's what I wanted to do. And it's hard to get people excited about a game when they're trying to pick it up and learn it. And they're like, I don't know how this is supposed to work. Because from the teaching, this is the weird educator in me. The whole thing with teaching is when you want to engage a student constantly in your teaching. And if the student disconnects, you've lost them. They're not coming back. And with the game, it's the same deal. If you immediately disconnected with your audience or the people playing with the game, they're not coming back to the game. Even if they say they will. Because you guys play video games. You've seen this happen all the time. Game comes out broken. You're like, oh, I'll come back to when it's fixed. 6 months later, when it's fixed, it's too late.
Yeah.
Same deal here. It's like, Marvel will get the fixes and an expansion will come out and it's going to have all the dream characters we wanted. And people will be like, first box Marvel is broken. I don't want to play it. I'll wait till Disney comes out.
Luke, is the only place to find the updated rules on BGG? Do they not have FAQ on their website or anything?
That was actually one of the things I was going to say, too, is this game definitely screams a real FAQ. Everything's on Board Game Geek. You have to dig through the forums, and not everything's super well laid out. And, like, we as a community have been putting together a FAQ that's just a Google Doc that we're like, hey, if you have questions, here's everything we found, here's the sources. But it's like, I really wish Ravensburger would do that because I don't like saying that I'm the end all be all, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Maybe you should be. Maybe you should approach them and say, this is what we have.
I've tried.
Here, use it.
I've tried.
I mean, there's plenty of games that have had community-made FAQs. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
To be fair,
All
I'm
over the place.
not speaking about Ravensburger at all or Prospero, but there have definitely been companies that just drop a game out into the wild and say, here you go, and then they don't look at it again. They don't care about an FAQ. They don't care about supporting it. They don't care about qualifying rules questions. They basically leave it up to the community. So like, there's certain games that have kind of changed over the years based on community interpretations, but who knows if that's ever what the designers intended.
Yeah, and I think what's weird about when you say that, like the community aspect is, especially with tabletop growing in the past many years, I would say probably ever since 2010 for me personally, I've really seen it take off. Yeah. But, a lot of these games, especially FFG is the perfect example. During the Star Wars Destiny cycle that I was in, really rough communication, really rough balance stuff, having a really hard time trying to say that they were just putting these article posts and like shadow dropping PDFs of rule stuff. But ever since they started doing the Twitch streams, instead of just doing these live blog posts all the time and stuff, they've been able to be a lot more open with their audience about the design stuff. Like I remember when I was watching the FFG thing for Champions for Gen Con Online, when they were talking about like a little FAQ at the end, someone asked about like, well, why are we just getting all the MCU stuff? Like, why are we getting the X-Men? And I think it was Boggs that said, well,
it's coming.
It's very honest. It's like MCU is super popular. We want to make money too. And like, we're going to use that as the reference. And like, that is the context that we need to have these companies approach with that stuff. Leader Games is also an incredible example of this, where they have all these blog posts talking about like for example, with the Eerie CPU faction that came out with the Underworld with that stuff, there was an error that they messed up when it went out in the wild. And they're like, yeah, here's a form, here's a thing. Sign up for the forum. We'll get you stickers. We'll send them out to you. Super open and honest about the process. I totally get when you have a game, you want to shadow drop a game and just be like, all right, game's out in the wild, figure it out. But what's the thing with all these games? Root is a line. Champions is a line, and all the stuff that FFG does is a line. Villainous is a line of games. And I know Ravensburger has been trying to do some more social media interaction stuff, but like, now's the time, if they want to treat Villainous as a line, they need to either jump in or they don't, because that's what's going to, especially with Marvel, since Marvel's being developed in-house, and like Marvel's a big name, but you don't want the stigma around your game being like, there's a bunch of weird misprints and I can't understand how to play the game. You don't want
well, I think the license is important enough to them that they'll put their best foot forward. I mean, we can only hope that. That's
I hope so too. I do believe they'll do the right thing. It's just I've just seen how they treated Disney, and the thing is, Disney was very well polished, because props to Prospero Hall for being as amazing as they are. They make some really good games.
Yeah.
But it's just clear that you take them away, and all that checks and balances system just kind of disappeared, and now it's just kind of like, all right, we need to reestablish this and make sure that we have these checks and balances in order so we can deliver stuff that people are going to care about.
All right, enough villainous. Let's talk about you, dude. Like, what else do you play? Like, you said you play video games. How long have you been into like board games, and what is your typical go-to game if you were to sit down and play a board game, or maybe another type of card game or LCG collectible game?
Oh man. So I've been playing board games since I was 8, and I was the knucklehead when I was 8 that I thought Monopoly was the greatest game of all time.
We all did.
Oh yeah, we all did. And I own probably at least 15 different Monopolies. That's how crazy I am.
Well, we weren't that. I wasn't that bad.
No. I was a young dumb person at one point in my life. But when it comes to actual games, so the main core board gamer I play with, like, I play with my friends and stuff, and we play all this stuff, but like the person who got me into board games is my dad. So I got to shout out my dad. It's also his birthday today, believe it or not. He's turned 60
Hey,
today.
happy birthday.
Yeah. And the game that him and I always play that I don't think gets enough credit for how good the engine is, at least, is the Cerberus engine that Cryptozoic uses for the DC deck building game. I know the game's not very thematic. I know that's not super, like, it's
Balance.
not super depth, but it plays really well. It does what it's supposed to do. And we play it all the time, and like we're at the point where my dad and I could play a 2-player game of DC in under 30 minutes. Like that game plays really well. I really like that game. Deck builders are also my go-to. We were talking before this. I really like Legendary. Definitely my go-to when I get the chance to play it though, and I'm literally doing it this weekend, is Star Wars Destiny. I love Destiny so much. It's an incredible game. But yeah,
Sorry that it went away,
stuff.
man.
Yeah, I also love anything Leader Games puts out. I love Root, so I like playing a variety of stuff, really, because I think also to help with like the conversations I have with like the Villainous stuff is when you experiment with a lot of different games, you have that breath coming in, so you can have these types of opinions, and I think that's really important too.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's transition over to what we've been playing, and we'll probably learn more about you here. Who wants to start? Anyone? Bueller?
Here, you want to start? You haven't said a lot yet tonight. I want to hear what you've been playing.
Well, as usual, I play a weekly game of Arkham. I'd had a couple weeks where I couldn't get into it because of work stuff going on at the same time, kind of bleeding into my free Tuesdays or whatever. But it's been kind of fun because, well, Ryan, you play as well, and David started playing, and now Jeremy's broken his back out. So we've been having a lot of conversations about Arkham, which has been fun. And so that also kind of led to Jeremy kind of going crazy about Mansions of Madness again. So we played that last night on his super cool setup, and that was a lot of fun. Tough, just like you would expect from any of the Arkham-related titles. But
Yeah.
outside of that, just a few things like with you. We've got some stuff planned for this weekend, I know. So
Yeah.
you want to talk
Cool.
about what you've been playing, Ryan?
This week's been pretty busy because we've been completely renovating our basement, and this renovation is. But I'll show you guys. I'll put pictures up because it's almost done. It's so exciting. So I haven't played a ton, but other than Marvel Champions, because I just always am playing Marvel Champions all the time. I did just get Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. I've been waiting to play it. I know Jeremy has already played through the entire campaign and done a review on it. I'm a little late. It's interesting. We have Jeremy Salinas here, who was, a fan, but maybe didn't like fully love it, versus like Jeremy Howard, who like has been telling me how it's like the best game ever made. So I'm probably gonna fall somewhere in the middle of them. So I'm excited to get into that campaign and see where that goes. Then of course we do our weekly live stream every Wednesday. This week we played Endangered Orphans, the House of Wrath from Certifiable Studios. Very darkly funny game. We had a lot of fun in the comments. We had a lot of fun making some, little dark humor jokes. So I definitely recommend watching that one and making sure to read the comments, because the commenters were on fire. There were some great comments mixed in there.
I'm never going to live
really
down what happened. I guess I have to make t-shirts now, so
Yeah, I think so.
it'll be fun.
Hilarious.
Well, people will know. So yeah,
Don't you
that was a good
love it
time.
when something you say becomes like a meme,
That's
and then you
it.
have to put it on T-shirts? It's great.
I will go next. Kira already mentioned Mansions of Madness. I went out and bought the latest two. I don't remember the names of them, but anyway, I mixed them in with all of my previous stuff. Some of my stuff is painted, some of it's not. I got it all out, and it is a monster of a game. Like, there's so much content there. And then with all the DLC, I think there's 22 scenarios. In the past 2 days, I played through 2 of them. I like the game well enough. The randomness of the dice always disturbs me. Like, I can't get past like rolling poorly. Like, there's nothing you can do
Sure.
really. You roll poorly and you spend some clues. If you have clues, then you're just beholden to the rules. I love the story aspect of it, and I think that's why I've gotten back into Arkham. Mostly because David's been pressuring me to do everything Arkham, so I've been playing a lot of Arkham. But I like Mansions. I don't know if I'm going to play through all the content. It's just a lot of stuff. And I feel like if I
It's a
ever put it
lot.
away, I'll never get it back out again because
Yeah.
there's just so much. It's like Legendary. Once you get it out, you're committed. Otherwise,
If you try to play through all that content in a row, you're going to get burned out so fast.
I
I mean,
burn out
some of
on
those
Gloomhaven.
campaigns are like, some of those little scenarios are like 4 hours long.
I know.
And we were playing, we have a month, well, before COVID, we had a monthly game group that met. And every month, the last game we'd play was Mansions of Madness. And we just played through, I think we've played through all of the new expansion. That's the one, I hope it's the newest with like, we have the train and the airship
There's
and
a
the
new one
ship.
after
Is there a
that,
new
the
one after
Circuit.
that?
Yeah, a Circuit one.
That one I haven't played any of, but unfortunately COVID has interfered with our monthly Mansions game, so hopefully we can get that back soon.
So also I've been playing Arkham, the LCG. I played through the first several scenarios. I say scenarios with Mythos packs when it first came out, and I stopped playing for, I don't remember what reason. Maybe it's because of the bag. I can't, that's another thing, I can't get past that bag, but I like the theme. I like the universe, so I'll try it again. I've been playing Marvel, obviously. And then behind us, you can see to my left and my right. This is the new Small World of Warcraft. I'm super excited for this. I'm not a huge Small World fan, but I am a Warcraft fan. And there's enough new rules in here to be super excited about this. So we're going to play this one tomorrow night. I look forward to it. I really do, because the classes are very thematic. They represent exactly what you would get from Warcraft. And then there's a lot of changes in it with how the factions work against each other, like how the Alliance works against the Horde, and then all these relics and different types of locations you can control. And the whole declining thing. I mean, everything you play in Small World is going to be represented in that. And then the new Pandemic Legacy. So my wife and I played through season 1 and season 2. So super looking forward to this. It's Cold War themed, and I don't know, it's a legacy game. Oh, and the last thing I'll mention is this. Thank you, Kira. For my birthday, she got me the Team Covenant board for Marvel.
Nice.
Fancy.
They're so nice, like super, super nice stuff. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought they'd be 3D printed, but these are like straight up manufactured. Like there's
I own their Destiny boards. They are incredibly nice. Like they make some solid stuff.
Yeah, they make great stuff. So that's me.
Awesome.
Luke.
So, yeah, Luke, you do play other stuff other
I
than
do play
Villainous,
other
right?
stuff. The 2 games I've been playing the most recently, I've been playing a lot of Champions and a lot of Marvel United, actually. And with Champions, what I've been doing in preparation for Rise of the Red Skull, I've been going through all the different villain scenarios on Expert, because I went through them all recently on just the normal mode, just trying to like get into like, all right, what's the best thing I can do? So I have both the Green Goblin scenarios left and Wrecking Crew on Expert. And then after I do that, I'm starting my run through Heroic. So I'm going to destroy myself. I do have a really awesome Spider-Man Justice deck that I have put together that I think is really working for me right now. So that's been really awesome. And I've also been trying out Hulk, and Hulk sucks.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Hulk.
I wish he was just a little better.
I think it's because we play solo. I think there's good, and that's the thing. Like, so quick aside, because Marvel Champions just announced that a lot of the new stuff coming out is actually like duo packs where you use 2 characters together,
right?
Which is super weird for those of us who play solo. And I think we're going to see more of this. Characters that just are not viable for solo mode on purpose. And I
Yeah.
think the Hulk is one of those. Like, it's almost impossible to win with the Hulk
That makes no sense to
unless
me.
you have unless you can have a character
Thematically.
that you can just, if you can just punch out the villain. But in Marvel Champions, the villains all scheme, and Hulk can't do anything about that. He
Nope.
just has to watch and hope you can punch the villain out fast enough. And if you can't, well, then you lose.
We have to remember too, we're very early in Marvel Champions. We're
Yeah.
just hit our first year at the game. The card pool is going to get enormous, and just like Lord of the Rings or probably Arkham, I'm not deep enough in Arkham, but as Lord of the Rings expanded out, there are now times where you can take a Hobbit deck into anything. It just depends on that card pool and what you can use. And I imagine those 15 cards in Hulk's deck are pretty good. I mean, they're pretty
they're
good
really
cards,
strong.
but the other cards surrounding him right now just aren't enough to be able to do all the things that you need to do as a solo player. But as you said, Ryan, as a dual player, man, he's there to knock people out, and he can knock the F out of people all the time.
For
I mean,
sure.
it's
He is
sick.
a monster.
I imagine
It
that
is.
he's a huge support character in a multiplayer game when you're dealing with like Ultron specifically, or Wrecking Crew, where you're having like you can do
Oh
the
man, overkill and all
Yeah.
those drones. Let me tell you, that is a blessing in surprise. It is beautiful.
Yeah, but I
Well,
will
it's
say his
interesting, too,
cards
like-
are awesome. Like the thematicness
yeah.
of the cards and what they do. I haven't had a chance to play them yet, but I'm planning to play them this weekend, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. But I also never play solo, so I'm hoping that I have a better experience than everybody else.
I play a lot of solo, and
Me too.
Hulk is pretty clear. Yeah.
I built a solo Iron Man deck over the week that is almost indestructible. So
Yeah, I want to.
Oh, really?
You need to share that list with me.
Yeah.
I'll share that list with you.
In my opinion, you're right, Luke. Spider-Man's the one guy who can pretty much solo anything. His cards are just really, really good. He can
Backflip,
lock
really
backflip,
good, very
backflip.
versatile.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I love it. It's like with my Justice deck, all I do is I just take threat off constantly, just pinging damage, and then as soon as I get the turn where I got two a web swinger or the swinging web kicks or whatever, I just yell Spidey swing, because Marvel vs. Capcom fans know what I'm talking about, and I just go in, deal a bunch of damage to Ultron, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I love
It's
Spider-Man.
probably
It's also
my
my
favorite video game ever is Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Oh,
by the way,
so
did you
all
guys-
the fight sticks I have below me?
Did you guys see the new Spidey boards they have coming out?
No, they have specific
No.
Spider-Man ones coming out.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have spoiled that. Anyway,
Oh, what, they're
yes,
just-
there's
Oh.
Team Covenant's having Spider-Man boards.
Are they going to do?
But I think
themed
they
boards for all the
spoil
characters?
by showing an image. What, Ryan?
Are they doing themed boards for every character or just Spider-Man?
I just think Spider-Man.
I know Zach's a huge fan of Spider-Man in the game, so that's probably why. So
Cool. Well, Luke, thank you very much for joining us. This has been awesome. You know, we don't dig deep into games too often, and it's really cool to see people that are passionate about a very specific game. I love that you love Villainous, because I have a soft spot for Villainous as well. I know that it's not super well received by gamers, and I don't really give a crap, because I think the game is really, really cool. I will always support that game. I bought every expansion, everything that I own up there. I've purchased minus the Marvel Villainous, which was given to us. But if a new edition's come out, I'll go buy it.
I'm still gonna buy it. I actually have 2 of everything, believe it or not. So just because I'm a crazy
you can't build. That's a little crazy.
Yeah, that's well. It's more of like when I want to play. If you want to do mirror matches, which is a thing you can do. I'm like, yep, let's do it. But yep, I love it. Thank you for having me on. This has been a pleasure. This has been a lot of fun.
And one more time, where can people find your YouTube, and where can people find your Twitch?
Okay, so if you want to find on YouTube, it is Let's Get Wicked. You literally type it. It's spaces in between the words, capital letters. And for YouTube or for Twitch is twitch.tv/Joker_Jonesy, all lowercase. And you can find me at Twitter at Joker_Jonesy, but with the capital J's, because someone apparently took the lowercase version. But you'll see me. I'm in my profile picture, so you'll find me there. But yeah, if you want to hear me talk about education and board games and video games, that's where you can see me just gush all over it. So.
And in case that was a lot for you to absorb watching this, you don't want to have to pause and go back. Our Discord channel is in our description, and you can find Joker Jonesy in there as well. And he will. I'm going to ask you, Luke. Go ahead and post all your links on the Chit Chat so everybody can go and check it out if you don't mind. But
Okay, I can do
Also,
that.
we don't have a normal person in our chat today, and so I'm going to ask everybody to also go to Discord and be sure to tell our very own Jeremy Howard happy birthday as well today,
Yes.
because I'm hoping he's out celebrating tonight. So
All right, before we go, I want to ask you one last thing, Luke.
Okay. All right.
We have Disney Villainous.
Yes.
We have Marvel Villainous.
Yes.
What do you think the chances are for Star Wars Villainous?
I think it's a lot higher than people are giving it. I just don't know when it's coming. I think it's
Ooh.
based on Marvel, but I think after Marvel, once Disney's done, we'll know. So I think
Now
that's
that I could get behind.
I can get behind that too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, spoilers abound. Anyway, again, thanks, Luke, for joining us. Everyone,
Yeah,
thanks
thank you.
for chiming in. Make sure to win a copy of Tiny Towns and Expansion Fortune. Just make a comment anywhere below, and you'll be entered to win next week's drawings. And until then, stay safe, and we will see you guys later.